The moment I begged for expired cake, a shadow fell over us. Cold, heavy, dangerous. The Mafia boss stepped forward, staring at my son like he saw a ghost from his past, and the decision he made in that instant pulled us into a deadly war we never asked for. It was supposed to be a normal morning at the bakery, warm light streaming through tall windows, fresh pastries stacked like golden hills behind spotless glass, the smell of butter, sugar, and cinnamon hanging in the air. Something my life hadn't tasted in so long I'd almost forgotten what peace smelled like. Then I pushed open the heavy door with Malik's small, cold hand gripped tight in mine. My son's eyes lit up the moment we stepped inside. He stared at the glass displays like they were museum exhibits, croissants shining under soft lights, loaves sitting proudly behind crystal-clear walls, danishes glazed so perfectly they looked like they belonged in a magazine. His shoes were old, the soles worn so thin I could see his socks through the bottom. The yellow of his t-shirt had faded from 100 washes in laundromat sinks. But his smile, God, his smile was everything I had left in this world. "Mom," he whispered, tugging my sleeve gently. "Can I pick one?" I swallowed the heaviness rising in my throat and forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. My wallet had $3.47 in it, enough for a single roll if I was lucky. Not enough for a birthday cake. Not even close. But I couldn't let him see that. Not today. Not on his 6th birthday. We stepped up to the counter where two young women in burgundy aprons stood arranging trays of pastries. They looked clean, warm, comfortable, everything I wasn't. One had her hair in a neat braid, the other wore glasses and smiled politely at the customers ahead of us. Malik pressed his face against the glass, his breath fogging up the display. "Look, Mom, that one has chocolate." I knelt down beside him, brushing a hand through his hair, and whispered the words that still burned shame into my bones. "Baby, I need you to wait here for just a second, okay?" He nodded, his attention already back on the pastries. I stood up, leaned closer to the counter, and lowered my voice so soft I could barely hear myself. "Excuse me, do you have any old cake? Anything expired? Just something small? It's my son's birthday today." The girl with the braid froze. Her eyes widened. The one with glasses blinked 3 times like she wasn't sure she'd heard me right. Behind them, a male baker in a white apron glanced over from the kitchen, his expression unreadable. Malik didn't notice. He was too busy staring at a glazed cinnamon roll like it was magic. And I thought, that was the worst part. The pity in their eyes, the awkward silence stretching between us, until I felt it. A shadow. Tall. Heavy. Looming. Someone was standing directly behind me. I turned slowly, my heart pounding, and my breath caught in my throat. A man stood there. Easily. Over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark tailored suit that looked more expensive than everything I'd owned in my entire life. Tattoos crawled up his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. His hands were clasped in front of him, knuckles scarred, ink covering every visible inch of skin. But it was his eyes that froze me in place, cold, steel gray, sharp enough to cut through bone. And when he spoke, the entire bakery fell silent. "Is it the boy's birthday?" His voice was low, calm, controlled, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that didn't ask questions. It gave orders. Every person in that bakery stopped moving. The cashiers went pale. The baker in the back straightened up like a soldier. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He didn't look angry. He didn't look threatening. But everyone else in the room looked terrified. I didn't know then, couldn't have known, that the man standing behind me, listening to every word of my whispered plea, was the most feared soul in the entire city. The man who controlled half the underground? The man whose name made grown men disappear? The man who had more blood on his hands than I could ever imagine? Bruno Vito. The Mafia boss. And he had heard everything. What happened next didn't just change my life. It started a war. My son's name is Malik. He just turned 6 years old today, though most people think he's younger. Hunger has a way of stealing childhood, making bright eyes dimmer, making laughter quieter, making birthdays feel like just another day of survival. I've been on my own with him for 3 years now. His father left before Malik even learned to walk. No calls, no money, no explanations. Just gone. We lost our apartment 8 months ago when I couldn't keep up with rent after losing my job at the grocery store. The manager said I was unreliable because I had to leave early twice to pick up Malik when he got sick at daycare. Unreliable. That word still stings. Since then, we've been bouncing between shelters, sleeping on friends' couches when we could, spending nights in my car when we couldn't. I've sold everything I owned just to keep food in his stomach. Jewelry my mother gave me, my laptop, my winter coat. But I couldn't sell his smile. I couldn't sell his hope. So when his birthday came around, I did what any mother would do. I walked into that bakery, swallowed my pride, and asked for scraps. I thought I was asking 2 cashiers. I didn't realize I was asking the most dangerous man in the city, and I definitely didn't realize he'd been watching us long before I ever walked through that door. The Mafia boss didn't wait for me to answer. He stepped forward, his polished black shoes clicking against the bakery floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Every eye in the room followed him. The girl with the braid took a full step, backward, her hand trembling as it gripped the edge of the counter. "I'll take that one," he said, pointing to a 3-tiered chocolate cake sitting in the center display, the kind with fresh strawberries on top, whipped cream roses along the edges, and a price tag that probably cost more than my weekly food budget. The cashier with glasses stammered, "Sir, that's $85. I don't care what it costs." His voice was flat, final. "Box it up." I found my voice, though it came out shaky and small. "Wait, no, please. You don't have to." He turned to me then, and I froze. Up close, his face was harder than I'd expected. Sharp jawline, scar running just beneath his left cheekbone, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and felt too little. But when he glanced down at Malik, something shifted. His expression softened, just barely, like a crack forming in steel. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling down so he was eye level with my son. Malik looked up at me, uncertain. I nodded slowly, my hand still gripping his shoulder protectively. "Malik," he whispered. "Malik." The Mafia boss repeated it like he was tasting the name, remembering something buried deep. "How old are you today, Malik?" My son held up 6 fingers, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. The Mafia boss nodded slowly. 6 years old. That's a big deal." He stood back up, his attention shifting to the cashiers who were standing frozen like statues. "I want 6 candles on that cake. Can you do that?" The girl with the braid nodded so fast I thought her neck might snap. "Yes, sir. Absolutely." I stepped forward, my voice stronger now despite the tremble in my hands. "Sir, I appreciate this, but we can't accept—" "You're not accepting anything," he interrupted, his tone calm but immovable. "I'm buying my nephew a birthday cake, that's all." "Nephew?" I blinked, confused. Malik looked just as lost. But the Mafia boss wasn't looking at us anymore. He was scanning the bakery, the sandwiches wrapped in paper, the soup station in the corner, the trays of warm croissants and danishes lined up like soldiers. "What else do you have that's hot?" he asked the cashiers. We have tomato basil soup, chicken noodle, and..." 2 containers of the chicken noodle, and give me 4 of those sandwiches. He pointed to the display. The turkey ones, and a dozen of those pastries. Mix them up. The entire bakery was watching now. An older woman near the window had her hand over her mouth. A man in a business suit stood by the door, phone halfway to his ear, frozen mid-dial. Even the male baker in the back had stopped working, his hands covered in flour, staring at the scene like he was witnessing something he'd never forget. "Sir, that's going to be—" The Mafia boss pulled out a sleek black wallet and placed $500 bills on the counter without counting. "Keep the change." The cashier's hands shook as she picked up the money. I felt my throat tighten. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. For the first time, the Mafia boss looked at me. Really looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain. Not the kind you get from a fight or a wound, the kind that lives in your chest for years, the kind that never heals. "He looks like someone I lost," he said quietly, his gaze drifting back to Malik. "A long time ago." Malik tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, who is he?" I didn't know how to answer that. The Mafia boss crouched down again, this time pulling something from his jacket pocket, a small folded piece of paper. He handed it to Malik gently. "Happy birthday, kid." Malik unfolded it carefully. Inside was a simple drawing, a stick figure holding a balloon. Childlike. Innocent. The kind of thing that didn't belong in the hands of a man like this. My son smiled. "Thank you." The Mafia boss stood, his jaw tightening like he was holding something back. He nodded once, then turned to the cashiers. "Make sure they get everything." The girl with the braid scrambled to pack the food, moving faster than I'd ever seen anyone move in my life. Within minutes, the counter was covered with bags. Cake, soup, sandwiches, pastries, everything. I stood there, numb, overwhelmed, unable to process what was happening. I don't know how to thank you," I managed. The Mafia boss looked at me one last time. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between regret and resolve. "You don't need to thank me," he said quietly. "Just take care of him." He turned and walked toward the door, his presence still commanding every inch of space even as he left. The bell above the door chimed softly as he stepped outside into the cold morning air. But he didn't leave. Through the window, I saw him stop on the sidewalk, his back to the bakery. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it slowly, and stood there, watching. Not threatening, not following, just watching. Like he needed to make sure we made it out okay. The cashier with glasses handed me the bags, her voice barely a whisper. "Ma'am, do you know who that was?" I shook my head, though something deep in my gut told me I didn't want to know. She leaned in closer, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "That's Bruno Vito, the Mafia boss. He runs half the city." My blood went cold. I looked down at Malik, who was clutching the small drawing like it was treasure. His face lit up with the kind of joy I hadn't seen in months. And outside, through the frosted glass, the most dangerous man in the city stood on the sidewalk, smoke curling from his cigarette, his eyes fixed on us like we were the only thing in the world that mattered. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that single act of unexpected kindness, had just painted a target on our backs. And the war was already beginning. I carried the bags in both arms, Malik walking beside me, his hand gripping the corner of my jacket. The cake box swung gently with each step, the pastries filled the air with sweetness, but all I could feel was the weight of eyes on my back. We walked 3 blocks, then 4, then 5, and the entire time, I felt it. That crawling sensation up my spine that tells you someone is watching, someone is following. I kept glancing over my shoulder, scanning the street, searching for him. For Bruno Vito. For the Mafia boss. But I didn't see him. That somehow made it worse. "Mom, are we almost home?" Malik asked, his voice small and tired. "Almost, baby. Just a few more minutes." Our building was old, crumbling at the edges, with graffiti sprawled across the brick walls and trash piled up near the entrance. The front door didn't lock anymore. The stairwell smelled like mold and cigarette smoke. But it was the best I could afford after the shelter kicked us out for breaking curfew, which really meant I'd stayed late at a job interview and got back 10 minutes past 9. We climbed the stairs slowly, Malik's little legs struggling with each step. By the time we reached the 3rd floor, my arms ached from carrying the bags, and my lungs burned from the effort. I fumbled with my keys, finally shoving the door open to our tiny studio apartment. One room, a mattress on the floor, a hot plate, a broken heater that only worked when it felt like it. But it was ours. I set the bags down on the counter, my hands shaking, and locked the door behind us. Deadbolt, chain, doorknob lock, all of them. Malik sat on the mattress, carefully opening the cake box like it might disappear if he moved too fast. "Can I have a piece now, Mom?" I forced a smile. "After dinner, okay? Let's eat the soup first." He nodded, his eyes still glued to the cake. I poured the soup into 2 mismatched bowls, my mind racing. Who was Bruno Vito? Why did he help us? And why did it feel like this wasn't over? We ate in silence, the warmth of the soup filling the cold apartment. Malik devoured his sandwich, licking his fingers clean, savoring every bite like it was the best meal he'd ever had. And maybe it was. After dinner, I let him have a small slice of cake. He blew out the single candle I'd found in a drawer, his face glowing with happiness. "Make a wish, baby." He closed his eyes tight, then blew. "What did you wish for?" I asked. He smiled up at me. "I wished we could always have cake." My heart cracked. I tucked him into bed an hour later, pulling the thin blanket up to his chin, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "I love you, Malik." "Love you too, Mom." He was asleep within minutes. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the door, my nerves frayed and buzzing. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. My breath caught. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. I didn't move, didn't breathe. "Becca." My name. He knew my name. "I know you're in there. I'm not here to hurt you." Bruno Vito's voice. Calm, controlled, unmistakable. I stood slowly, my legs trembling, and moved toward the door. My hand hovered over the lock. "How do you know my name?" I whispered through the door. "I know a lot of things. Open the door. Please." Every instinct screamed at me to stay inside, to stay safe. But something in his voice, something tired and honest, made me hesitate. I unlocked the chain, turned the deadbolt, opened the door just enough to see him. He stood in the dim hallway light, still wearing the same dark suit, hands in his pockets, no threat in his posture. But his presence alone filled the space. "How did you find me?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger now. "Why are you here?" "I've been watching you," he said simply. "For 2 weeks." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Not like that." He stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back. He stopped immediately, raising his hand slightly. "I'm not here to hurt you, Becca. I'm here because you and Malik aren't safe." "We're fine," I shot back, though my voice betrayed me. "No, you're not." His eyes locked onto mine. "You're living in a building with no security, no locks that work, in a neighborhood controlled by people who'd sell you out for $20. You think I'm the only one watching you?" I felt my throat tighten. Why do you care? For the first time, his expression cracked. Pain flickered across his face, raw and unguarded. Because Malik looks like my little brother, he said quietly. Antonio. He was 6 years old when he died. Same age, same smile, same innocence. I stared at him, unable to speak. I couldn't protect him, Bruno continued, his voice low and strained. I was 15. I thought I was tough. I thought I could handle anything, but I couldn't stop what happened to him. And I've been living with that for 20 years. Silence stretched between us. I don't need your pity, I whispered. This isn't pity. His jaw tightened. This is guilt. And maybe a chance to do something right for once. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and held it out. There's an apartment. Clean. Safe. Fully stocked. Security on every floor. It's yours if you want it. I didn't take the paper. I can't accept that. Why not? Because nothing's free. Especially not from men like you. He didn't flinch. You're right. Nothing's free. But this isn't a debt. It's protection. For Malik. I don't need... Yes, you do. His voice was firm now. You don't know what's happening out there, Becca. My enemies know I helped you. They saw me in that bakery. And if they think you matter to me, they'll come for you. Terror flooded through me. Then why did you help us? Because I couldn't walk away? His voice broke just slightly. Not this time. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to scream at him to leave us alone. But then I looked back at Malik, curled up on that thin mattress, his belly full for the first time in days, his face peaceful in sleep. And I thought about the cold nights ahead, the hunger, the fear. I need to think about it, I whispered. Bruno nodded slowly. You have until morning. After that, I can't promise I can keep you safe. He turned and walked down the hallway, his footsteps fading into the darkness. I closed the door, locked it, and slid down to the floor, my head in my hands. Malik stirred in his sleep, whimpering softly. And I knew, God help me, I knew, that I couldn't do this alone anymore. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I packed everything we owned into 2 garbage bags, woke Malik gently, and carried him down the stairs. The black car was waiting outside. Bruno Vito stepped out, his expression unreadable. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face, and whispered the words that would change everything. Okay, we'll come with you. He nodded once, and just like that, we stepped into his world. The drive lasted 20 minutes, but it felt like crossing into another world. We left behind crumbling buildings and broken streetlights, passing through neighborhoods I'd only seen in magazines, tree-lined streets, boutique shops with glowing window displays, restaurants with names I couldn't pronounce. Malik sat beside me in the back seat, his small hand clutching mine, his eyes wide as he watched the city transform outside the window. Bruno drove in silence, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds like he was checking for something, or someone. Finally, we pulled up to a building that made my breath catch. It was sleek, modern, all glass and steel rising 12 stories into the gray morning sky. A doorman stood outside beneath a burgundy awning. Security cameras dotted every corner. The entrance glowed with soft golden light. This is it, Bruno said, parking in an underground garage that looked cleaner than any apartment I'd ever lived in. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. He stepped out, opened my door, then gently lifted Malik from the seat. My son looked tiny in his arms, his head resting against Bruno's shoulder, still half asleep. We took an elevator that moved so smoothly I barely felt it rise. No graffiti, no broken buttons, just polished mirrors and soft instrumental music. Bruno pressed the button for the 8th floor. When the doors opened, he led us down a quiet hallway with plush carpet that swallowed our footsteps. He stopped at apartment 804 and unlocked the door. "Go ahead," he said softly. I stepped inside, and my world tilted. Warm light spilled from recessed fixtures in the ceiling. The living room was furnished with a soft gray couch, a coffee table with fresh flowers in a vase, and curtains that framed floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kitchen gleamed. Marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, cabinets that looked like they'd never been touched. Are you sure this is the right place?" I whispered. Bruno set Malik down gently. "It's yours." I walked further inside, my hands trembling as I touched the back of the couch like it might disappear. Everything was clean. Everything was new. Everything was safe. "There are 2 bedrooms," Bruno said, gesturing down a short hallway. "One for you. One for Malik." Malik's eyes lit up. "My own room?" Bruno nodded. "Go look." My son ran down the hallway, his little feet pattering against the hardwood floor. I heard him gasp, then squeal with delight. I followed, my heart pounding. The room was small but perfect. A twin bed with a blue comforter. A nightstand with a lamp shaped like a rocket ship. Shelves lined with books and toys, things I could never afford. A window with blinds that actually worked. Malik climbed onto the bed, bouncing slightly, his face glowing with pure joy. "Mom, look, it's so soft." I covered my mouth with my hand, tears spilling over before I could stop them. Bruno stood in the doorway, watching quietly. "I had it set up last week," he said, "just in case." I turned to him, my voice breaking. "Why? Why would you do all this?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at Malik, who was now arranging the stuffed animals on his bed, talking to them like old friends. "Because he deserves it," Bruno said finally. "And so do you." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him we couldn't accept this, but the words wouldn't come. Bruno walked back into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. It was fully stocked. Milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, fruit, juice boxes, sandwich meat, cheese. The freezer had chicken, ground beef, frozen meals. "There's a pantry too," he said, opening a cabinet filled with pasta, rice, canned goods, cereal, snacks. "If you need anything else, just let me know." I leaned against the counter, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to." He closed the cabinet, his expression unreadable. "But there's something you need to understand." The air shifted. I straightened, sensing the change in his tone. "There are men outside this building," he continued. "My men. They're watching every entrance, every exit. No one gets in or out without me knowing." "Why?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Because the moment I helped you in that bakery, people noticed. People who want to hurt me will use you to do it." Fear coiled tight in my chest. "Then why bring us here? Why put us in danger?" "Because you were already in danger," he said flatly. "At least here, I can protect you." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. "I need to take this," he said, stepping toward the door. "Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." "Wait." But he was already gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, my heart racing. Malik came running out, holding a stuffed bear. "Mom, can I keep this one?" I forced a smile. "Of course, baby." But I wasn't listening anymore. I moved quietly toward the door, pressing my ear against it. Bruno's voice echoed faintly in the hallway, low, controlled, but laced with something I hadn't heard before. Anger. "I don't care what Dario thinks," he said, his voice sharp as a blade. He comes near them and I'll burn his entire operation to the ground. Silence. Then, no, I'm not negotiating. This isn't business. This is personal. My blood ran cold. Dario. I didn't know who that was. But the way Bruno said the name, like it was poison, told me everything I needed to know. We weren't just in danger. We were in the middle of a war, and the enemy already knew our names. I stepped back from the door, my hands shaking, and looked at Malik, who was now lying on the couch, hugging his bear, his eyes already drooping with exhaustion. This apartment was beautiful, safe, everything I'd ever wanted for him. But beneath the warmth and the light and the kindness, I could feel it. Something dark, something deadly. And it was closing in. 3 days passed in that apartment, and I still couldn't believe it was real. Malik woke up every morning with a smile I hadn't seen in years. He'd run to the kitchen, open the fridge, and stare at the food like it was a treasure chest. He'd eat breakfast at the small table by the window, swinging his legs, talking about the books Bruno had left for him. Bruno. He came by every day, sometimes twice. At first, I thought it was to check on us, to make sure we hadn't destroyed his perfect apartment or stolen anything. But the more he visited, the more I realized he wasn't checking on the apartment. He was checking on Malik. On the fourth morning, Bruno arrived with a backpack full of art supplies, crayons, markers, coloring books, construction paper. He sat on the floor with Malik for an hour, helping him draw pictures of rockets and dinosaurs, his deep voice softening every time my son laughed. I watched from the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, my heart torn between gratitude and fear. This man, this dangerous, feared man, was being gentle with my son, and it terrified me, because I was starting to trust him. By the fifth day, I noticed the changes. More men outside. Not just 2 or 3 anymore, at least 6 stationed around the building at all times. I saw them when I looked out the window. Dark suits, earpieces, hands always near their jackets. Bruno's visits became shorter, more tense. He'd check his phone constantly, his jaw tightening with every notification. His conversations in the hallway grew sharper, his voice lower, more controlled, like he was holding back an explosion. "Is everything okay?" I asked one evening as he stood by the door, preparing to leave. He paused, his hand on the doorknob, his back to me. "No," he said quietly, "but I'm handling it." "Handling what?" He turned, and for the first time I saw exhaustion in his eyes. Not physical tiredness, something deeper, the kind that lives in your bones. "There's someone who wants to hurt me," he said. "And the best way to do that is to hurt the people I care about." My breath caught. "You barely know us." "Doesn't matter." His gaze shifted to Malik, who was asleep on the couch, curled up with his stuffed bear. "He matters. You matter." "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why do we matter to you?" Bruno was silent for a long moment, his eyes still on Malik. "Because I haven't cared about anyone in a long time," he said finally, and I forgot what it felt like. Until I saw him. He looked at me then, and the walls he'd built around himself, the cold, dangerous exterior, cracked just enough for me to see the man underneath. Broken, haunted, desperate for something good. "I know you don't trust me," he continued, "and you shouldn't. But I'm asking you to let me protect you anyway." I wanted to say no, wanted to grab Malik and run, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. We weren't safe anywhere else. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to the sound of Bruno's voice in the living room. Low, dangerous, barely restrained. I slipped out of bed and crept to the doorway, peeking into the main room. Bruno stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles were white. "I don't care what Dario wants," he growled. "He touches them and I'll—" He stopped mid-sentence, listening. Then his entire body went rigid. "Say that again." Silence. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned with fury. "When?" Another pause. "Find him. Now." He ended the call and stood there, staring out the window, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. I stepped into the room. "Bruno." He turned, and the look on his face made my blood run cold. "Get Malik," he said, his voice flat and commanding. "Pack a bag, we're moving you." "What? Why?" "Because Dario knows where you are." My heart dropped into my stomach. "How?" "Someone talked. Someone always talks." He moved toward the door, pulling his jacket on, checking the weapon holstered beneath his arm. "I have men downstairs. They'll take you somewhere safer." "Wait. Where are you going?" "To end this." "Bruno." His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen and his entire expression shifted. Not anger this time. Fear. He stared at the message for 3 long seconds, his face pale, his hand trembling. "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just turned the phone toward me. The message was short, simple, devastating. "Nice new family you've got. Be a shame if something happened to them." Attached was a photo of Malik, playing in the window, taken from across the street. My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, my vision blurring with panic. "Oh my God." Bruno's voice was ice. "Pack. Now." But before I could move, his phone rang again. He answered immediately. "What?" I watched his face change, from fury to confusion to something worse. Dread. "How many?" he asked. A pause. "Where are they now?" Another pause. He closed his eyes. "Lock down the building. No one in or out." He ended the call and looked at me, his expression grim. "What's happening?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Dario's men are outside." My heart stopped. "How many?" "Enough." I looked toward the bedroom where Malik was still sleeping, innocent and unaware. "What do we do?" I whispered. Bruno moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just slightly. I followed, peering out into the street below. 3 black cars were parked across the road. Men in dark clothing stood beside them, watching our building. Waiting. "They're not attacking yet," Bruno said quietly. "They're sending a message." "What message?" He turned to me, his eyes hard but honest. "That they can get to you whenever they want." Terror flooded through me. "Then we need to leave. Now." "We can't." He gestured to the street. "They're watching every exit. The moment we move, they'll know." "So what do we do?" Bruno was silent for a moment, his mind racing. Then his phone buzzed one more time. He looked at the screen, and his jaw tightened. Another message. Another photo. This time, it was of me, standing in the kitchen, taken through the window. Below it, 5 words. "We're closer than you think." I felt the room spin. Bruno grabbed my shoulders, his voice urgent. "Listen to me. We don't have much time. I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" I looked into his eyes, those cold, dangerous eyes that had somehow become the only thing keeping us alive. And I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. "I trust you." He pulled me close, his voice low and fierce. "Then get ready, because this war just started." And outside, in the shadows, Dario Ventresi's men waited, watching, smiling. The first hour passed in suffocating silence. Bruno paced the apartment like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders in a language I didn't understand. Italian, maybe, or something darker. His men responded in clipped tones, their voices crackling through the speaker. I sat on the couch with Malik pulled close against me, my arm wrapped tight around his small shoulders. He clutched his stuffed bear, his eyes darting between me and Bruno, sensing something wrong even if he didn't understand what. "Mom?" he whispered. "Why is Mr. Bruno mad?" "He's not mad, baby," I lied, brushing his hair back. "He's just working." But Malik wasn't convinced. He pressed closer, his little body trembling. Bruno ended another call and moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just an inch. His jaw clenched. "They're still there," he muttered. "How many?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Too many." He dialed again, his fingers moving fast across the screen. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. He tried another number. Same thing. His expression darkened. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Marco isn't answering. He's supposed to be at the east entrance." "Maybe he's just—" "Marco always answers." Bruno's voice was sharp, final. He tried another contact, then another. Nothing. He lowered the phone slowly, his face pale. "What does that mean?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. The second hour was worse. Bruno stopped pacing, stopped making calls. He stood by the door, his back against the wall, his hand resting on the weapon beneath his jacket. His eyes were fixed on the peephole, unblinking, waiting. I couldn't sit anymore. I moved to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I poured water I didn't drink. Every sound felt amplified, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, Malik's soft breathing as he dozed fitfully on the couch. "Bruno," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the silence. "What's happening?" He didn't look at me. "They're moving." "Who?" "Dario's men. They're clearing out my security." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, clearing out?" "I mean my men aren't answering because they can't." His voice was cold, detached, like he was describing the weather instead of people dying. "They're being taken out one by one." "Oh my God." I pressed my hand to my mouth, nausea rising in my throat. "How many guards did you have outside?" I managed. "6 when we got here." "And now?" He finally looked at me, his eyes hollow. "Now, I don't know." By the third hour, the building had gone quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps in the hallway, no voices from neighboring apartments, no distant hum of traffic outside. It was like the entire world had been swallowed by silence. Malik woke up, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, I'm hungry." I forced a smile, though my hands were trembling. "Okay, baby, let me get you something." I moved to the kitchen, opening the fridge with shaking fingers. I grabbed a juice box and a sandwich, my mind numb, moving on autopilot. Bruno's phone buzzed. He answered immediately. "Talk to me." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Bruno's face shift, from tension to confusion to something darker. "Say that again," he said, his voice low. A pause. "All of them?" Another pause. His grip tightened on the phone. "How is that possible?" He listened for another moment, then ended the call without a word. He stood there staring at nothing, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. "Bruno?" I whispered. He turned to me slowly, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something in his eyes I never thought I'd see. Fear. "They're gone," he said quietly. "Who?" "All of them. Every guard I had outside this building." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean they disappeared. No bodies, no signs of a fight. Just gone. That's not possible. It shouldn't be." His voice was tight, strained. "But Dario has people everywhere. Police, city officials, people who can make things vanish." I felt the walls closing in, the air growing thinner. "So, what does that mean for us?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Bruno moved to the window again, peering through the curtain. The black cars were still there. The men still watched. But now there was no one watching them back. "It means we're on our own," he said. Malik tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, why are the lights doing that?" I looked up. The overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then they went out completely. The apartment plunged into darkness. My breath caught. Malik grabbed my hand, his grip tight and desperate. "Mom?" "It's okay, baby," I whispered, though my voice shook. "It's just the power." Bruno moved instantly, pulling a small flashlight from his jacket. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the door. "Stay here," he ordered. "What are you doing?" "Checking the hallway." "Bruno, don't—" But he was already unlocking the door, pulling it open just a crack. The hallway was pitch black, silent, empty. He stepped out, the flashlight sweeping left, then right. I held Malik close, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate, coming from the stairwell. Bruno froze, the flashlight beam fixed on the door at the end of the hall. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Bruno backed into the apartment slowly, his hand on his weapon, his eyes locked on the hallway. "Lock the door behind me," he whispered. "What?" "No. Lock it. Now." He stepped back inside, and I slammed the door shut, my hands fumbling with the locks. Deadbolt, chain, doorknob. The footsteps stopped. Right outside our door. Silence. Malik whimpered, pressing his face into my stomach. Bruno stood in front of us, his weapon drawn, his body a wall between us and whatever was out there. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps. Polite, almost friendly. A voice followed. Smooth, cold, amused. "Bruno, I know you're in there." It wasn't Bruno's voice, it was someone else. Someone dangerous. "We need to talk," the voice continued, "about your new family." I felt my knees buckle. Bruno's hand tightened on his weapon. And in the darkness, with the lights flickering back to life for just a moment, I saw his face. Calm. Controlled. Ready. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The knock came again. Louder this time. And the war we'd been waiting for finally arrived. Fear tastes like copper and ash. I know that now. It coats your tongue, fills your lungs, makes every breath feel like swallowing glass. It turns your legs to water and your thoughts to static. It makes time stretch and collapse all at once. Seconds feeling like hours, moments disappearing into darkness. That's what I felt standing in that apartment, in the flickering light, with my son trembling against me and a stranger's voice seeping through the door like poison. "Bruno, let's talk." The voice was calm, almost pleasant, like he was inviting us to dinner instead of threatening our lives. Bruno didn't move, didn't respond. His weapon stayed raised, his body positioned between us and the door. "I know you can hear me," the voice continued, "and I know you got the woman and the boy in there with you." My blood turned to ice. He knew. He knew we were here. Bruno's jaw tightened, but he still didn't speak. The voice laughed softly. "Come on, Bruno. Don't be rude. We've known each other too long for this." "Dario," Bruno finally said, his voice low and deadly, "you're making a mistake." "Am I?" The amusement in Dario's voice made my skin crawl. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one trapped in a box with nowhere to go." Bruno's eyes flicked to me, then to Malik, who was clinging to my leg, his small body shaking. "Becca," Bruno said quietly, urgently, "take Malik into the bedroom, now." "What?" "No, Now." The command in his voice left no room for argument. I scooped Malik into my arms, his little hands wrapping around my neck as I carried him down the short hallway. My legs felt like they might give out at any moment, but I forced them to move. I pushed open the bedroom door and set Malik down gently. "Mom, I'm scared," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I know, baby. I know." My voice cracked, but I couldn't fall apart. "Not now. Listen to me very carefully, okay?" He nodded, his eyes wide. I knelt down and guided him toward the bed. "I need you to hide under here. Can you do that for me?" "Why?" "Because it's a game. A very important game." I swallowed the sob rising in my throat. "You're going to stay under here, and you're going to be as quiet as a mouse. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you don't come out until I come get you. Do you understand?" "But Mom..." "Malik." I grabbed his small shoulders, looking into his terrified eyes. "Promise me. Promise me you won't come out." His lip trembled. "I promise." I pulled him into a crushing hug, breathing in his scent, soap and innocence and everything good left in this world. "I love you so much," I whispered. So much." "I love you too, Mom." I helped him crawl under the bed, adjusting the comforter so it hung low, hiding him completely. "Stay quiet, baby. I'll be right back." I stood, my legs shaking, and walked back into the living room. Bruno was still by the door, his weapon trained on the handle. Outside, Dario's voice continued, almost bored. "You're not going to shoot through the door, Bruno. That's not your style. You like to see your enemy's face when you pull the trigger." Bruno's finger twitched on the trigger, but he held his fire. "How many men do you have out there?" Bruno called out. "Enough." "Enough to die?" Dario laughed. "Always so dramatic." "I'm not here to kill you, Bruno. I'm here to make a deal." "I don't make deals with dead men." "See, that's where you're wrong." Dario's voice grew colder. "You will make a deal, because if you don't, I'm going to burn this entire building to the ground with you, the woman, and that little boy still inside." My heart stopped. Bruno's eyes found mine across the room. In that moment, I saw everything he was thinking, every calculation, every terrible option running through his mind. He moved toward me, lowering his weapon slightly. "Becca," he said quietly, "I need you to listen very carefully." "Okay." He reached behind his back and pulled out a second weapon, smaller, lighter than his own. He held it out to me. I stared at it, my hands frozen at my sides. "I don't know how to use that," I whispered. "You point it and pull the trigger. That's all you need to know." "Bruno, I can't..." "Yes, you can." His eyes were fierce, desperate. "If someone comes through that door who isn't me, you shoot them. You don't hesitate. You don't think. You just shoot." Tears blurred my vision. "I've never..." "I know." His voice softened. "But you're a mother. And mothers do impossible things to protect their children." He pressed the weapon into my shaking hands. It was heavier than I expected. Cold. Lethal. "Safety's off," he said. "Just aim and fire." I nodded, unable to speak. Outside, Dario sighed dramatically. "Time's up, Bruno. Last chance." Bruno moved back to the door, positioning himself at an angle. "Go to hell, Dario." Silence. Then softly, "Wrong answer." The door handle turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Bruno raised his weapon. I raised mine, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold it. The handle stopped turning. 1 second of perfect, terrible silence. Then the door exploded inward. Wood splintered, metal shrieked, and the world erupted into chaos. Gunfire shattered the air, deafening, blinding, overwhelming. I screamed, diving behind the couch, my finger frozen on the trigger. Bruno fired 3 shots in rapid succession, his movements precise and controlled even as the doorframe disintegrated around him. A body hit the floor. Then another. Voices shouted in the hallway. Orders, curses, panic. Bruno moved like liquid violence, firing, reloading, firing again. But they kept coming. Through the smoke and noise, I saw them. Dark figures pouring through the doorway, weapons raised. Bruno took down two more, but a bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He grunted in pain, but didn't fall. Becca! Now! I looked up and saw one of Dario's men moving toward the hallway, toward the bedroom where Malik was hiding. Something snapped inside me. Not fear, not panic, pure, maternal fury. I raised the weapon, my hands steadying, my vision narrowing, and I pulled the trigger. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, but the shot found its mark. The man crumpled. I stared at my shaking hands, at the weapon that had just saved my son's life. Bruno glanced back at me, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Good, he said. Then he turned back to the door and kept fighting. Because this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Time stopped making sense. One moment I was crouched behind the couch, my ears ringing from gunfire, my hands slick with sweat as I gripped the weapon Bruno had given me. The next, the entire apartment was a war zone. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. The smell of gunpowder burned my nostrils. Shattered glass crunched under my knees as I moved, trying to stay low, trying to stay alive. Men kept coming. Through the shattered doorway. Through the windows Bruno had told me were bulletproof. They weren't. Through the walls themselves, it seemed, like demons materializing from shadows. I counted 6 bodies on the floor, maybe 7. I couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't think. All I could hear was the screaming inside my head. Malik. Protect Malik. Keep him safe. Bruno moved like a machine, methodical, lethal, unstoppable. He fired with precision, each shot deliberate, each movement calculated. But even machines break down. I saw it happen in slow motion. A man came through the window, glass exploding inward like a crystal bomb. Bruno turned, fired twice, dropped him. But a second man followed. Bruno's weapon clicked empty. He reached for another magazine, but the man was faster. A shot rang out. Bruno's body jerked backward, blood blooming across his ribs. No! The scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. The man turned toward me, his weapon rising. I didn't think. I raised mine and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The first 2 shots went wide, slamming into the wall. But the third found its mark. The man dropped. Bruno collapsed against the wall, his hand pressed to his side, blood seeping between his fingers. I scrambled toward him, sliding across broken glass, my knees screaming in pain. Bruno! I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. His eyes were unfocused, glazed with pain. Stay with me. Do you hear me? Stay with me. He blinked, his vision clearing slightly. Malik? He's safe. He's hidden. But you need to— Behind you! I spun. Another man climbing through the window. I raised my weapon and fired without hesitation. He fell backward, tumbling out into the night. When I turned back to Bruno, his eyes were on me. Sharp, focused, almost surprised. You're getting good at that, he muttered through gritted teeth. Shut up and stay alive, I shot back, pressing my hand against his wound. The blood was hot, sticky, terrifying. Can you stand? Not yet. We don't have time. The lights flickered again, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed us. I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming from the stairwell. More of them. How many men did Dario have? Becca. Bruno's voice was strained but steady. The bedroom. Check on Malik. I'm not leaving you. Go. I hesitated, torn between the man bleeding beside me and my son hidden under the bed. Go, Bruno barked. I ran. Down the hallway, my feet barely touching the ground. I burst into the bedroom, my weapon raised, scanning every shadow. Malik? I whispered urgently. Baby? Silence. My heart stopped. Malik! A small voice came from under the bed. Mom? Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. Are you okay? I'm scared. I know. But you're doing so good. Stay there. Just a little longer. I heard glass breaking in the living room. More shouting. Bruno's weapon firing in short, controlled bursts. I ran back. He was on his feet now, leaning against the wall for support, blood soaking through his shirt. 3 more bodies littered the floor, but they were still coming. How many? I shouted over the noise. Too many. A figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, broad, dressed in an expensive suit that looked obscene in the middle of this carnage. Dario Ventrasi. Even through the smoke and darkness, I recognized him from Bruno's description. Cold eyes, cruel smile. The kind of man who enjoyed others' suffering. Bruno. Dario's voice was calm, almost friendly. You're bleeding. I'll live long enough to bury you, Bruno replied, raising his weapon. Dario laughed. Will you? You're outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. His eyes found me. And you've got civilians to protect. Not exactly ideal conditions. Let them go, Bruno said. This is between us. Oh, but that's where you're wrong. Dario stepped over a body, moving closer. The moment you decided to play family man, you made them part of this. You made them targets. Bruno's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't, Dario warned. My men have orders. If I don't walk out of here, they burn the building. Everyone dies. I felt my heart sink. But Bruno smiled, a cold, terrible smile. You're bluffing. Am I? Yes. Because if you burn this building, you lose your leverage. And you need me alive, don't you? For something. Dario's smile faltered. Bruno took a step forward, his weapon steady despite the blood loss. You came here personally because you're desperate. Your operation is falling apart, and you need me to fix it. I came here to make you suffer. Then you failed. Bruno fired. The shot caught Dario in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Dario roared in pain and rage, raising his own weapon. But I was faster. I stepped out from behind the couch and fired 3 times. The first shot missed. The second hit his chest. The third hit his throat. Dario's eyes went wide. He staggered, his hand clutching at the wound, blood pouring through his fingers. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. Then he fell. Silence. Absolute deafening silence. Bruno stared at me, his expression unreadable. I stared at the weapon in my hands, smoke curling from the barrel. I killed him, I whispered. You saved us, Bruno corrected. Outside, the sounds of fighting stopped. Voices shouted. Bruno's men, finally arriving, finally breaking through. It was over. 17 minutes. That's how long it lasted. 17 minutes that changed everything. I dropped the weapon and ran to the bedroom. Malik was still under the bed, exactly where I'd left him. It's okay, baby, I whispered, pulling him out, holding him so tight I thought I might break him. It's over. You're safe. He clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder. Behind us, Bruno collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the floor, his hand still pressed to his wound. I looked at him. This dangerous, broken man who had risked everything to protect us. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was a protector now, just like him. The sirens came like a lullaby after a nightmare. Distant at first, then closer. Their wailing cutting through the smoke and silence that had swallowed the apartment. Red and blue lights painted the walls through the shattered windows, turning the wreckage into something almost beautiful. Almost. Bruno slumped against the wall, his breathing shallow, his face pale as paper. blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading. Bruno. I crawled toward him, Malik still clinging to my neck, his small body shaking with sobs. Stay with me. Help is coming. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Malik? He's safe. We're both safe. Because of you. He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. Told you. I'd protect you. And you did. Now let us protect you. Footsteps thundered up the stairwell. Heavy boots shouted commands. Bruno's men burst through what was left of the doorway, weapons drawn, scanning the carnage. One of them, a large man with a scar across his jaw, dropped to his knees beside Bruno. Boss, medics are on their way. Stay with us. Bruno's hand reached out weakly, finding mine. His grip was cold, trembling. Don't. Let them separate you, he whispered. We're not going anywhere, I promised, squeezing his hand. Malik lifted his head from my shoulder, his tear-stained face looking at Bruno with wide, frightened eyes. Mr. Bruno, are you okay? Bruno's expression softened, even through the pain. I'm okay, kid. Just tired. Malik reached out with one small hand and touched Bruno's cheek. Don't be tired, please. I'll try. The paramedics arrived moments later, flooding the apartment with urgency and equipment. They loaded Bruno onto a stretcher, working quickly, efficiently, their faces grim but focused. Are you family? One of them asked me. I looked at Bruno, at Malik, at the wreckage around us, the bodies, the blood, the shattered remains of a battle we'd somehow survived together. Yes, I said firmly, we're family. The paramedic nodded. Then come with us. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I sat in a hard plastic chair beside Bruno's bed, Malik curled up in my lap, finally asleep after hours of crying. My clothes were still stained with blood. Bruno's, Dario's, maybe my own. I couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't bring myself to care. All that mattered was the steady beep of the heart monitor, the rise and fall of Bruno's chest. The fact that we were still alive. A nurse had cleaned and bandaged the cuts on my knees, the gashes on my arms from the broken glass. She'd offered me sedatives, food, a place to rest. I'd refused everything except the chair beside Bruno's bed. I wasn't leaving him, not after what he'd done for us. Malik stirred in my arms, mumbling something in his sleep. I brushed my fingers through his hair, whispering soft reassurances, watching Bruno's face in the dim light. He looked different like this, peaceful, almost, without the weight of violence and danger pressing down on him. Just a man, wounded, human. Hours passed. Maybe it was dawn when his eyes finally opened. He blinked slowly, disoriented, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on me. Becca. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Hey, I whispered, leaning forward. Welcome back. He tried to sit up, wincing immediately. Don't. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. You were shot. Twice. You need to rest. He looked down at Malik, still sleeping in my arms. He's okay? He's perfect, because you kept your promise. Bruno's eyes closed, and for a moment I thought he'd passed out again. But then I saw it. A single tear sliding down his cheek. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I brought this into your life. You didn't bring danger into my life, Bruno. My voice cracked. You gave us a chance to survive it. There's a difference. He opened his eyes, looking at me with something I'd never seen before. Hope. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now? He managed a weak smile. Now I make sure nothing like this ever happens again. 3 days later, Bruno was discharged. He moved slower, carefully, his hand pressed to the bandages wrapped around his ribs. But he was alive. Strong. Determined. He'd made arrangements while still in the hospital. Phone calls, meetings with lawyers and people whose names I didn't ask about. By the time we left, everything had changed. A new apartment, bigger, safer. In a building with security that made Fort Knox look casual. A trust fund for Malik's education. Protection, real protection this time, that would last as long as we needed it. You don't have to do this, I told him as we stood in the new living room, sunlight streaming through windows that actually had curtains. Yes, I do, he said simply. Malik ran past us, laughing, exploring his new room for the 10th time. Bruno watched him, that soft expression returning to his face. He deserves this, Bruno said. You both do. So do you. He looked at me, surprised. You deserve a second chance too, Bruno. You know that, right? He didn't answer. But the way he looked at me, like I'd given him permission to believe something he'd stopped believing years ago, said everything. That night, we had cake. Not because it was anyone's birthday. Not because there was anything to celebrate besides being alive. Just because we could. Bruno had bought it from the same bakery where this all started. A small chocolate cake with 6 candles, even though Malik's birthday had passed weeks ago. Make a wish, kid, Bruno said, lighting the candles. Malik closed his eyes tight, his face scrunched in concentration. Then he blew. What did you wish for? I asked. He looked up at me, then at Bruno, his smile bright and innocent and full of hope. I wished we could stay together, like a real family. I felt tears sting my eyes. Bruno cleared his throat, looking away, but not before I saw his expression crack. That's a good wish, he said quietly. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life slowly, carefully, began to feel normal. Malik started school. I found a job. Something small, something that let me be home when he needed me. Bruno visited often, bringing books, toys, and eventually, something more. Trust, friendship, family. I still thought about that morning in the bakery sometimes, about the desperation that had driven me to whisper that humiliating question. Do you have any old cake? I'd been asking for scraps, for leftovers, for anything that no one else wanted. Instead, I got something I never expected. A protector, a guardian, a man who saw my son and decided he was worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. On Malik's 7th birthday, Bruno arrived with a cake. 3 tiers, chocolate frosting, fresh strawberries. The same cake he'd bought that first day. Happy birthday, kid, he said, ruffling Malik's hair. Malik beamed up at him. Thanks, Uncle Bruno. Uncle Bruno. The title had come naturally, months ago, and Bruno, the feared Mafia boss, the man whose name made grown men disappear, had cried when he first heard it. I watched them together, my heart full in a way I'd never thought possible. All I'd asked for was old cake. What I got instead was a new life, a safe home, a second chance, and the most dangerous man in the city choosing to protect us. Not because he owed us anything, not because we were useful to him, but because sometimes, in the darkest corners of the world, broken people find each other, and together, they become whole. If you're ready for the explosion coming in the next story, smash subscribe, hit like, and stay close for more mind-blowing and exciting stories.